The Indiana Hoosiers go on the road and get their first Quad 1 win of the season over Penn State.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. This is a bonus reaction episode for you on a Sunday afternoon as Indiana basketball goes on the road to the historic Palestra and takes down Penn State 77-71. We'll talk about how they did it, what they need to work on moving forward, and what is next for this Indiana team. But we need to celebrate this win. What a huge opportunity this was for Indiana to get away from Assembly Hall to go play what is technically a road game that is considered a road game by the Big Ten and was majorly or majority-wise Penn State fans. Indiana goes on the road and handles business, beating Penn State 77-71. Now, there's a lot to break down here. There's a lot of good things to talk about. There are some not so good things to talk about. And I think some things that we can focus on moving forward for this Indiana team. But let's dive into the numbers for just a second here. Indiana 77, Penn State 71. We were led in points by Oumar, Ballo with 25. How about Mackenzie and Mgbako with 20? The solo run he had coming out of the second half, where Indiana goes on a 10-0 run. And that's pretty much what won the game for us. Think about that. This was tied at 29 points apiece at the half. And then these two teams just light it up in the second half. 48 points for Indiana, 42 points for Penn State, and a 10-0 run to start the second half was the difference for Indiana. Hoosiers win by 7. That 10-0 run, 7 of those were by Mackenzie and Mgbako, or 8 of those, right? It was 2 threes in the two-pointer, right? So you had a complete big run, a solo run by Mackenzie and Mgbako, who won the game for you. And there's more things to get to on that. But again, Oumar, Ballo, 25. You had Mackenzie and Mgbako with 20. Luke Goody had a big 12 points. Miles Rice had 9 points. Trey Galloway had 8 points. The thing I want to highlight with Galloway, he had 6 assists to just 2 turnovers. Miles Rice had 4 assists to just 2 turnovers. And Indiana, I'm going to say only turned it over 14 times in this game against a really, really physical, aggressive, high-pressure Penn State defense that forces 17 turnovers a game. Indiana only committed 14 on the road and comes out with a win 77-71. And there were a lot of concerns going into this game, right? No Malik Reneau. How would Indiana perform? Where would they go for offense with their leading scorer not playing in this game? Think we found our answer, don't you? Think we found our answer, and it's Oumar Ballo, who had possibly his best game as an Indiana Hoosier. And we just talked about that in the previous game against Rutgers. Oumar Ballo, 25 points, 13 rebounds. Heck, he had 3 assists as well. Got into a little bit of foul trouble. The number I want to talk about is 7 of 11 from the free throw line from your big man. That's big-time stuff on the road for Indiana. So it was very obvious what Indiana's game plan was. We're going to hammer the paint. We're going to spread it out outside. We're going to let Oumar Ballo play by himself. You got to spread the floor around a little bit without having Malik Reneau in there. And it was a new-look team. It was a new-look offense. And dare I say it looked better? Dare I say it looked more effective? Was it one-dimensional for quite some time? Yeah, it was. But Indiana's goal was, we're going to pound the paint. We're going to give it to number 11 until they stop it. And heck, even in the final few minutes of the game, when Oumar Ballo comes back in with 4 fouls, he scores immediately. Penn State had no answer for what Oumar Ballo was doing to them. And then you saw Indiana, when they would throw it down low, Indiana would crash. Hoosiers actually worked the basketball around the perimeter. They actually touched several hands on offensive possessions, and it led to several good-looking three-point shots. Didn't knock them all down, of course, but I'll take 39% from three. I'll take 9 makes on 23 attempts on the road in that type of an environment. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Mackenzie and Mgbako had some of those, of course. Right, Miles Rice had 1, Goody had 3, Mgbako had 4, and Galloway had 1, talking about three-pointers that were made. And you have to have that from those types of players. You have to have Mgbako and Goody, who are your best shooters, and Galloway too. They have to make shots. We talked about that after the win against Rutgers, and you got a win against Rutgers because of it, and I think you get a win over Penn State because of that as well. Also, because Penn State couldn't make threes until down the stretch, and Indiana was able to hold on more on the end of the game in just a little bit. But, man, I think the game plan was solid. I think the execution was solid, and I think the effort was there once again. The effort and the passion by this Indiana team showed on the floor. Big-time rebounds, fighting for loose balls, even getting a little emotional on the floor with these Penn State guys who, again, are just so scrappy on the defensive end, and Indiana found a way to overcome that. 77-71. Oumar Ballo, I think, is my player of the game. He has to be for Indiana. You don't have him, you get blown out against the Nittany Lions. This is your first quad 1 win of the year for Indiana. It's what they noted on the broadcast. And that is true. This is your first quad 1 win. And you start talking NCAA tournament, you have to have games like this. You have to have wins like this on your resume. But it got pretty testy there late. It got a little squirmy as Indiana almost let it slip away. I want to talk about how the game ended and why this was such a big-time performance for the Hoosiers and why it just looked a little bit different when the final buzzer sounded. More for you coming up next right here on this reaction episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here as we are wrapping up the regular season right now, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action and getting into the playoff action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on players who are going to score the first touchdown or how many touchdowns they score, or their rushing yards, their receiving yards, their longest reception. All of that can be done on FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it. I love going to all of those things. And one of my favorite memories was a concert that I went to just last year, just right up the road, and Game Time helped me get there. Energy and excitement, they were just unforgettable. I've got another concert coming up next month that I'm going to that I just can't wait to be a part of. And now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, was looking for tickets for my parents, actually, who wanted to go to a concert, same way that I love going to concerts. And they said, oh, there's so many different apps, there's so many different websites. Where do we go? I said, I got you. Go to Game Time, turn on Game Time Picks, and it's going to do all the work for you. And even my parents were able to figure out how easy it was and how convenient it was using Game Time Picks. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, welcome back into this bonus episode, a reaction episode of Locked On Hoosiers on a Sunday afternoon. Appreciate you being here, whether this is your first time, you're coming back for the second or third, or if you're one of my everydayers. Thank you so much for being here. And reminder, for those of you listening on audio, whether it's Spotify, Amazon, Apple, wherever you're listening, thank you so much and really appreciate your support. And be sure that you are following the show, subscribing if you can, leaving us those 5-star reviews. That helps us grow tremendously on the audio side, and having notifications turned on for bonus episodes just like this one. And for those of you on YouTube, liking the videos helps me out a ton, so be sure you're doing that. Commenting down below your thoughts on Indiana taking down Penn State to move to 2-1 3-1 now in Big Ten play, now that we have wins over Minnesota, Rutgers, and now Penn State. So leave your comments down below on that. And if you have not already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're growing. I say it all the time that we just continue to grow, and it's because it's true. We're over 4,200 subscribers now on YouTube. You know what that means. We're making the push to 43. So thank you so much for doing that as well. Indiana beats Penn State 77-71 on the road at the Palestra. Talked about some great performances by Oumar Ballo, by Mackenzie Mgbako. It was great to see him just get back into a flow and be aggressive with the basketball. And I still think he could be even more aggressive with the basketball. Talking about Mackenzie Mgbako, other than shooting threes in rhythm, and you saw Mike Woodson, because a couple of times he hesitated and didn't take the shot. Mike Woodson said, shoot the ball, man. He said, shoot the ball on the first attempt rather than hesitating, trying to sidestep, and then either not taking the shot or taking a much more difficult contested shot. And now you got to give him credit on the shot he hit from about 18 feet in the corner. I don't know how he made it. It was a terrible shot, but it was awesome that it went in. And then he got bailed out on one near the end of the game on the same exact play, just got fouled on it, stepped up and knocked down 2 huge free throws. But I love seeing Mackenzie Mgbako confident and making shots, because he truly is that X factor for this Indiana team. Again, I think Trey Galloway had a really big game with 6 assists, just 2 turnovers. Miles Rice was very effective with the basketball. Him and Galloway not turning it over very often. What was that? 4 turnovers combined for the 2 main ball handlers against that Penn State pressure is really, really key moving forward for this Indiana team. I think Luke Goody had a good game. He's finally starting to figure it out a little bit, especially on the rebounding side of things. Luke Goody was your second leading rebounder behind Oumar Ballo with 13. Luke Goody had 7 boards, big-time boards. A couple of those were offensive rebounds that gave Indiana second possessions as well. So really is impressed by his play today. Anthony Leo, I thought, played solid minutes. Wasn't overly, showing up in the stat sheet, if you will. But Bryson Tucker, kind of the same way. He was in there, had some rebounds, had a couple of assists as well. His athleticism is so unbelievable, and you can see just how good the McDonald's All-American Bryson Tucker is going to be in his future at Indiana. And overall, I think the Hoosiers played a really good game. You played lockdown defense in the first half. Offense kind of struggled, and both teams kind of feeling each other out. You're tied at 29 at the half. You come out of the locker room, and as we've already talked about, Indiana goes on a huge run. Threes, turnovers, big-time buckets, pushing the basketball, something Indiana did all day long, and I've been begging for it to happen for over a year now, and we're finally starting to do it, and you see how effective that it can be. But then Indiana got up by 15, 16 or more points. And then all of a sudden, the stagnant defense we were on, or that we were playing, the lockdown communication defense that we had, poof, was gone. It just disappeared. And we let Penn State do pretty much whatever they wanted to do in this game in the last, 8 to 10 minutes probably of that second half. They got everything. They did anything they wanted to between Kern, who is a fantastic player, Baldwin, who's a really good player. I mean, those guys carried this team for Penn State throughout this ball game, and they decided, we're just going to get to the rack. We're just going to get in and get up shots and see what we can do, and we're going to go right at Oumar Ballo, the big that Indiana has, the lone big that Indiana has. He got in foul trouble. Can't believe he survived and didn't foul out, but regardless, Penn State would not go away. Indiana's defense disappeared, and the Nittany Lions hit their first 3 late in that ball game. They ended up making 3 of them by the end of it. We're fortunate they didn't make more. They're not a good 3-point shooting team anyway, but we're lucky that they didn't make more, because if they did, we would have lost this basketball game. Sounds stupid, but they were 0 for 11 or 12 or something at one point. I mean, it was ridiculous that they couldn't knock down a 3-point shot. But so Indiana had to lock down, tighten up, and figure out what they wanted to do. And communication was on and off, I guess. I guess the good communication on defense with guys getting ball screened, Oumar Ballo not dropping deep enough, and guys getting straight to the rim. Things that you can fix and work on as you go, but this was still a really good performance because down the stretch, last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, when Penn State started making shots and the crowd started getting into it and Indiana started turning the ball over, we didn't panic. We could have, and we almost did, especially with that on-ball pressure, the full court pressure that Penn State put on Galloway and Miles Rice. I mean, heck, even inbounding the basketball was tough. But Indiana didn't crumble. We didn't fold like we have in the past. We got fouled. We made our free throws, played good defense, played disciplined defense, and we walked out of the Palestra with a 77-71 win. I'm happy with it. I'm impressed. Penn State's a good team. They're going to give teams all sorts of fits this year in the Big Ten. Remember, that's a Penn State team that has a win over top 10 Purdue at the time, top 20 Purdue now, but they were a top 10 team at the time when Penn State beat them by double digits, 81-70. And they also have a win over Northwestern, does that Penn State team. They're going to get some teams this year. And I still think they'll flirt with the NCAA tournament. I really, really do. And I think Indiana just got themselves an NCAA tournament win with the victory over Penn State. We'll have more of a breakdown on numbers and performances and things like that on the full episode tomorrow, but do want to give you an idea of what's coming up for Indiana. We're back home on Wednesday against USC. Then we're on the road at Iowa. We play that Illinois team that is very, very hot that just blasted Oregon in a couple of games ago or a couple of days ago in their previous game. That will be on the 14th at Assembly Hall before you go to Ohio State on the 17th. So again, USC at home, at Iowa, Illinois at home, and at Ohio State. Winnable games, tough ones, but winnable. And I'm very happy and pleased with how Indiana performed for most of this game. You relied on Oumar Ballo. Did you miss Malik Reneau? Sure. But I think there's more to be said on that. And we'll have more for that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. A full episode coming tomorrow. Reminder, this show's free to you each and every day. Normal episodes Monday through Friday. Reaction episodes throughout the week and on the weekends as well. We have transfer portal things to talk about with Indiana football. We'll have that plus more reactions to Indiana 77-71 win over Penn State at the Palestra. Be sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel that you've liked the video. You leave your comments and thoughts down below. And for audio listeners that you're subscribed, leaving good reviews and have those notifications turned on as well. Okay, back for a normal full episode tomorrow of the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.